Today, we're going to untangle a giant legal knot by looking closely at a fascinating, deeply human case, Sakai v. Republic, specifically GR No. 224015, which was decided in July 2018. We're going to break down exactly how Philippine law handles international heartbreaks and, more importantly, new beginnings. Because, as you know, when marriages cross borders, the legal paperwork to undo them can get incredibly complicated. And that is exactly what we're going to simplify for you right now. So let's just dive right into the core issue with a scenario that affects countless Filipinos all over the world. Picture this. You mutually, amicably agree to end your marriage with a foreign spouse abroad. Does doing that mean you surrender your freedom to remarry back in the Philippines? It sounds like a total paradox, right? You peacefully part ways only to find out that your home country might still literally view you as legally married. To figure out how this works, here is our roadmap for today. We'll look at a Japanese marriage and divorce, the roadblock at the Court of Appeals, the dilemma with Article 26, the Supreme Court's final resolution, and finally, the process of proving foreign law. All right, part one, a Japanese marriage and divorce. Let's establish the baseline situation of our main subject here, Stephen Juego-Sakai. On August 11, 2000, she married Toshiharu Sakai in Japan, following all the proper wedding rites over there. But, well, the honeymoon phase didn't last very long. After just 2 years, in 2002, they mutually agreed to get a divorce decree, legally dissolving their marriage in Japan. Fast forward over a decade to April 5, 2013, Stephen files a petition before the Regional Trial Court, or RTC, in Camarines Norte, Philippines. Basically, she just wanted her home country to recognize that she was legally divorced. And initially, things looked great. By October 2014, the RTC granted the petition and recognized the divorce as perfectly valid under Philippine law. Which brings us to part two, the Court of Appeals roadblock. Just when it seemed like everything was cleanly resolved, the Court of Appeals stepped in and threw a massive wrench into the works. They actually reversed the trial court's decision, and their reasoning was shockingly literal. They claimed that because Stephen actually consented to the divorce by mutual agreement, she disqualified herself from having it recognized in the Philippines. Under their strict reading, the foreign spouse had to unilaterally force the divorce against the Filipino spouse for it to count. And this brings up a genuinely terrifying complication for our protagonist. Will she be trapped in a dissolved marriage forever simply because she chose to part ways amicably instead of fighting it out in some bitter, drawn-out legal battle? The Court of Appeals essentially told her that by cooperating with her Japanese husband, she completely forfeited her right to be recognized as single in the Philippines. To really understand why this happened, let's look at part three, the Article 26 dilemma. We have to decode the actual law at the heart of this. We're talking about Article 26, Paragraph 2 of the Family Code. This is a very famous exception in Philippine family law. Generally, the Philippines doesn't recognize absolute divorce for its citizens. But this specific exception was crafted to give a Filipino citizen the capacity to remarry when their foreign spouse validly gets a divorce abroad. It's meant to protect Filipinos from that completely unfair situation where the foreigner is free to move on, but the Filipino is legally chained to a ghost marriage. But as we're seeing, the dense legal wording here created a massive clash of interpretations. So, we have a total legal standoff. On one side, you have the Court of Appeals holding this extremely strict, literal view. Consent equals no recognition. Because Stephen agreed to it, she wasn't a passive victim, so no protection for her. On the exact opposite side, you have Stephen's plea. A mutual divorce should still allow for recognition. She argued that the whole fundamental purpose of the law is to prevent the absurdity of a Filipino being married to someone who isn't married to them anymore. Thankfully, we get to part four, the Supreme Court's resolution. Stephen didn't give up. She took this all the way to the highest court in the land. And in 2018, the Supreme Court delivered a massive victory for common sense. They explicitly stated that even if the petitioner participated in or even initiated the divorce, she must still benefit from the exception. They completely rejected the idea that the law should punish someone for seeking a peaceful, amicable separation. The legal knot was finally officially untied. The Supreme Court pragmatically ensured that the marriage is dissolved under Philippine law. Since Toshiharu Sakai was already free to remarry under Japanese law, Stephen absolutely must have that exact same capacity to remarry under Philippine law. It levels the playing field. But hold on, there's one last technical hurdle in Part 5, proving the foreign law. Before Stephen could throw a victory party, the court pointed out a crucial procedural rule. Philippine judges cannot take judicial notice of foreign laws. Basically, that means Philippine courts don't just automatically know the laws of other countries by heart. Even though nobody disputed that the Japanese divorce actually happened and the Supreme Court settled the consent issue, Japanese family law still has to be formally presented and proven as a fact inside the Philippine courtroom. To cleanly cross the finish line, the Supreme Court ordered 3 specific steps. First, remand the case back down to the regional trial court. Second, Stephen has to present actual proof, like authenticated copies of the Japanese civil code relating to divorce. And third, once that evidence is in, the RTC grants the final official recognition of the divorce.
Let's quickly run down the main takeaways from this explainer. 1. Mutual foreign divorces absolutely can be recognized in the Philippines. 2. Consenting to or even initiating that divorce does not disqualify you. 3. Article 26 is there specifically to protect the Filipino spouse's capacity to remarry. And finally, you still have to play by the rules of evidence and formally prove that foreign law in court. It's a perfect example of the Supreme Court balancing strict legal procedure with pragmatic, humane outcomes.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to think about this. How will this compassionate, pragmatic ruling shift the landscape for Filipinos looking for new beginnings? Think about how many people will finally be able to find peace, close painful chapters, and get a second chance at happiness because of this exact legal precedent. It's a real game changer. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep seeking to understand the systems that shape our world. See you next time.